Mate, you work with a lot of men to elevate them and sort of unlock their potential in their relationships, in business, and in life. What are your current thoughts on the state of men's advice and men's role models that we see in the online world today?
Great question. I believe that there is a very saturated market at the moment and a lot of noise in the industry where, because there are so many options, we're then faced with this high level of confusion on who it is that we should trust, who it is that we should actually listen to and continue to follow. I know personally, I've gone through my own journey where I would listen to certain people online that had big followings, where you could see so much content and a high level of engagement of people just commenting and attending all these webinars and these courses and these products that they're selling. So they had a lot of success in their reach. What I learned was they understand marketing and they understand sales, but the message behind what they were wanting to share with their community wasn't as in depth or in alignment to my own values and what I believe is to be true for me of what it is to be a man or a masculine man or just a good human in society. So for me, the current market or the trend that I see is everyone is attempting to help. Like, there is so many people out there that are wanting to share their story. They are wanting to share their experiences, and they mean well. Yet I feel like the trap that we're falling into is, although someone may have the right intentions to help, that they may not necessarily be the right person for you to get the help that is required to get there, or to help you get to that next point. So for me, I believe that there's different stages of the journey that you should be looking for a mentor. How do you find the right mentor is probably the deeper question. It's like shopping and going through the aisles of food and grabbing some ingredients, whipping up a recipe and seeing if you like what you've cooked. And if you don't, then change some ingredients. I believe that there is multifaceted coaches out there or mentors out there that have a broad spectrum of experience that can provide a lot of value to someone if they're wanting the generalized approach to all facets of life and business. Yet I believe that there is also a lot of importance to find someone that is their specialist in their field as well. So one of my mentors is specifically designed to help me in the department of sales. So I work with him specifically for everything to hire my sales team, train my sales team, manage my sales team, and fire my sales team and keep that standard across the board. But then it trickles into not just being sales, because sales in the business is still connected to humans. It's still connected to people. It's still connected to relationship problems. It's still connected to life issues. So the initial intention for me when I engage with my current sales mentor, Gulliver Giles, and he's renowned to be the sales warlord in the country, or I'd say around the world, and he's been my best mate. He's been my marketing coach, my sales coach, my life coach, my relationship coach for advice, my confidant when I've needed help, when I've cried at 3 a.m, when I've wanted to blow everything up and restart again and to be on the edge and he's had to pull me off. Like, there's many times where I've been walking on that fine line of that edge and he's had to just grab me and be like, "Hey, no, that's not what we're going to do. We're going to do this. We're going to do this instead." So what do I believe currently about the market? People mean well, yet I would suggest 95% of coaches or mentors should not be coaching or should not be mentoring. There's this element that people say, fake it till you make it. And is that to be true for a statement to believe in and to follow? I'm not too sure. I would suggest that a more empowering position to hold is to be coaching or mentoring people in an area or a particular problem that you have already solved or that you already have experience and career capital to help them with. So for me personally, when I have thought about what I've done throughout my entire life, my journey, my military career, then stepping into coaching, then running a marketing agency, and then business coaching, and then running the military immersions that we do for men. I'm wanting to ensure that I maintain that same level of authenticity and congruency to my message for who I am as a person, to be able to then ensure that when I'm speaking about a topic or speaking to the men, I'm not trying to make it up as I go along. Like, I'm coming from a position where this is where I was, this is what was going on at the time, and this is where I wanted to go, and these are the steps that I followed to bridge that gap. These were the hurdles, these were the choke points and the bottlenecks along the way. This is what I did. Now, it may not work for you, but this isn't the way, it is a way. And I believe that the position that we can probably maintain a lot more accurately is, this is not what to do, this is what I did. And I think that puts you into a different frame, that you're coming from a position of like, well, I did this and this is the success I had. This is how I overcome this problem, not this is how you need to do it, and be so black and white and so direct about it. So to answer your question in a long-winded way, what do I believe about the current market of mentors and coaches? I believe that there is still a lot of work to be done, especially around masculinity and men's coaches. I believe that there is a lot of people out there that are wanting to help, but I also believe that there is a lot of people that see the infatuation of running an online business, a digital business with high margins and low overheads and no need for staff, because you can automate majority of an online coaching business, and it's very lucrative if you can package up information and sell it as a digital product, and then learn how to market that product and sell it off page, fully automated. There is a definite benefit to that for a lifestyle business. That's where I see a lot of the regurgitated YouTube content. That's where I see there's not much depth to what they're teaching, because they're just learning and consuming content from one another and just repackaging it up in a way to be able to make money. And if your desire is to be able to make money, that will not last as long as if you're going in with the intention to actually serve the community and help people. I believe that's what the difference is at the moment with what I'm seeing with the trend of the coaches and mentors. And probably another darker, deeper point to it is, I would strongly suggest that if there is men on here that are men's coaches, or you are a coach, then your whole entire job is not to validate the client and not to be soft in your approach to allow them to get away with a standard that you believe is less than what they can actually achieve or where they should be operating. In my mind, for why I believe we have such cut through in what we do, is, for me, I will tell the honest truth no matter how hard it is for someone to hear, because they don't have friends and they don't have partners and family members to actually have the courage to tell them, because they love them and they're coming from that place of love. But in my mind, if you love someone so much, you should be telling them the truth. No matter what, you should be so brutally honest to them that they're like, that really hurt, but I needed to hear that. And that's what most of the feedback is from the guys that we talk on the calls that then end up coming through our program. It's like, thank you for being so honest. Thank you for telling me what I needed to hear, even though it hurt and it sucked at the time. But that's what I needed to be able to overcome XYZ. That's what I think is definitely missing, is there's a lot of coaches, there's a lot of men out there that aren't willing to have that hard conversation, to make the tough decisions. And if I am in a position where I'm seeking a mentor, I'm not only just wanting to seek a mentor that has the information or the experience or the knowledge to help me in that particular field tactically. What I'm also wanting is someone to be able to see my blind spots, but more importantly, to be able to see what I don't see, but communicate it in a way that I need to hear it. And it's not someone that's going to be, that pushover or that people pleaser of like, oh yeah, you're right. It's like, no, this is what needs to happen. This is where you're falling short. This is why, and this is why. I love you, but this is what you need to do moving forwards. Otherwise, these consequences and these effects. I say that because from personal experience, I've been that pushover coach. I've been the person that's allowed clients to get away with a standard that I know, that I look and I watch and I listen to the stories. I listen to the victimhood. I listen to the blaming. I listen to all the excuses, and I continue to allow them to feed it within themselves. And I'm like, hang on, this isn't right. But I realized that why I was doing that was because of the fear that I would have had if they were to be upset with what I said, that they would then leave. And when I noticed that that's what was coming up for me, but that was then what wasn't serving them, everything has completely changed from that point moving forwards. So that's what I'd say to answer your question on that one.
The framing is so important as well, like how you deliver that feedback to someone and how you go about that. I think that is one of the most fundamental flaws that we have in interpersonal relationships, whether it's a coach mentor, whether it's a spouse, a significant other, a partner, or family members. It's like, it's the ability in the moment to take that breath and say, okay, here's something that you are clearly not aware of that you're doing, a bad habit, a bad decision, a rut you're in, whatever. I need to tell you about it, but I need to frame it in a way that is loving, compassionate, considerate, and constructive. Not just be like, hey, you're a dickhead, you're fucking up, and not give any kind of context or material information that can help the person. And I've been on both the receiving and the giving end of that, right? Like I've caught myself, an hour after, a blow up with a friend or a partner and gone, I definitely didn't say that right. Like I did not, in the heat of the moment, bring out the best constructive framing for that person. And then to the flip side, I've also had it on in my more conscientious moments when maybe I've done something stupid and someone's called me out on it, but just kind of like not really giving me anything other than being like, you fucked up. And you sit there and you think, would have been nice to get that a little bit differently rather than just having, what feels like an attack. But it really is, it's a sign of love. Like it's a sign of caring when someone has the ability to come to you with a problem and say, this is an issue. Because if they didn't care, they would just walk away. They wouldn't bother. And like the point you raised around you noticing that the fear of your clients leaving if you gave them the real hard truth instead of the people-pleasing sort of acceptance that maybe the people pleaser inside you was defaulting towards. That flip, what can you sort of tell people and what kind of insights can you give people about how they can make that same flip in their own personal lives with their family, their friends, their relationships, to go from giving someone non-constructive, abrupt feedback or no feedback at all to giving them tough love delivered in a pragmatic and constructive way?
Great question. I believe it was Jordan Peterson that said, if the people that you are talking to don't listen, then stop talking to them. Right? It's like, if they're not listening, then stop talking. But to answer your question, it depends on the context of it depends if it's a partner, depends if it's your best mate. There has to be, I believe, there's no black or white answer. There has to be context behind the scenario. Prime example, if you are a man who would attend the immersion, or I'm working with you in the mastermind or one-on-one, there's a level of permission that is already given in that engagement and in that relationship that you're willing to hear, no, that's fucking wrong, and you know why it's wrong. So let's talk about why you're avoiding doing the work. Let's go there, because it's not you that's now it's impacting. Your family feels it and your team senses it too. So like, let's go there. That's completely different to if I was then going to be sitting at home with a family member, my brother, my sister, my mom, my dad, or a partner, and then go the same way. So I think you have to discern in what level of permission you have with the person and how you can then actually go to them with the hard, honest truth. That for me is the first step. The second portion of the equation of how you could approach someone to give them the hard, honest truth, especially when it has come to my previous relationships, men always want to solve problems. That's what we are designed to do. We want to just solve a problem. We're like, oh, well, why don't you just do this? So you should just do this. And we immediately want to attack the problem and solve the problem, because that's how we are attached to us in terms of us doing what our job is, which is to protect and to provide and to solve anyone else's problems around us. So ultimately what would usually happen is when I would be confronted with a problem in my intimate life, usually I'd want to then just immediately go, oh, well, why don't you just tell her to do this? Or why didn't you just tell your boss to do this? Or you just got to fix this and you should start doing this. I'd always be on the back foot. I'd always be in a, not a defensive mode, but like, oh, just this is how I would do it. But we speak completely different languages. So I would always begin the frame, and I've begun doing this with my clients as well, and also with my male friends, where I would say, are you wanting me to hold space for you right now and just to listen? Or would you like my feedback or my opinion? That in itself straight away sets a completely different tone for them to want to engage with you and ask you either a question or just to word vomit all over you, because sometimes we just want to be heard. The majority of the time we want to be seen, and we want to be understood with the problem that we're experiencing. But not all the time do men as well and women want our problem solved. We just want to talk about it. So I would always then, in that second part of the equation, be then say, do you want me to hold space? And do you want me just to sit and listen? Or would you like my feedback? And most of the time they say, I just want you to listen. Or I'd love for you to listen, but then I'd love for some feedback. And then that level of permission is then given for you to be able to share your opinion. There is a phrase that I remember learning from Date with Destiny, Tony Robbins' Date with Destiny event back in when he last attended before the lockdowns, was the way to frame it when you're wanting to not come across combative with what you're learning with this person in this conversation. And at this time, we were going through a process to elicit someone's values and the vehicles that they were using to meet their top values. And the statement was, it is my hallucination that a person with these traits and these attributes or these values would be living or operating in life in this way. So the first portion of it is, it's my hallucination that this person would X. So what I learned from that in that moment was, I'm not saying, oh, well, Angus, you're like, this is why you're ruining relationships. This is why it's like I'm attacking you in that way. But what I learned was, if I said, well, Angus, it'd be my hallucination that if I was a person who modeled this from their father, who didn't have this healthy upbringing, who then had an issue with sedating themselves with drugs and alcohol all the time when they feel stressed and burnt out from work, and they're disconnected from their partner, it'd be my hallucination that they're probably feeling not like they're not worthy. They're feeling like they're failing themselves and failing their partner. And then what they're probably turning to, be my hallucination, is anything to avoid actually doing the work. Straight away in my mind, when I say that to you and I feel that, it is a completely different energy for me going, I'm pointing at you and I'm like prodding you and poking, making it personal. But there is definitely 100%, I truly believe, a time and place to be personal and to be more direct. And that's what's missing in coaching. That's what's missing in society amongst men, is we're not being direct enough. We're not being personal enough. We're wanting to gloss over and to have this global generalization of like, all men are this, all women are that, all business is this, all the system and whatever is that. And what we're doing is we're abdicating the responsibility to something outside of ourselves without it making it personal, to realize we are the problem and we always will be. And because we have created all of our problems, but we're also in total control of it, we can change it. And we do have that ability to do so if we choose it. And I think for me, it's either understanding the level of permission you have with the person, I think will dissolve a lot of that challenge that a lot of people have when it comes to providing feedback and honest feedback and constructive criticism.
Yeah, I really like setting the stage. The advice you gave around, would you like me to listen, or would you like to hear my response, is something that I've heard from other people before, and I think it's so powerful and so great. The other one, which is in the same sort of vein, is just sort of allowing or creating the space for some kind of discussion. And it is a way of disarming and taking the combative or the conflict out of it. And your reference to Tony Robbins' sort of phrasing, I think, is a perfect example of that. You know, it is my hallucination, or it is my imagination that this could be an outcome of someone in a similar situation. And it's not you. It's not so personal and so direct. I always used to like just setting the stage by saying things like, hey, look, I want to open up here and I want to have a connecting conversation. I don't want to get emotional, but, you know, obviously emotions are real and they come up when we say things, but I want to just take the moment to talk about something, and I'm not trying to hurt you and I don't want you to hurt me, but I just want to really get deep into this topic. And it doesn't have to be something, you know, that serious. It can be a little lighter. It can be more detailed. It can be a mantra if you need it to be. But even just sort of setting the stage and saying, hey, I want to have a real conversation here. I'm not here to hurt you. But if I say something that does hurt you, please let me know and we can stop at any point, create a safety net and set the stage for that moment to happen, rather than just diving in and being like, oh, by the way, here's something fucked up about your life, because that's really going to trigger anyone, right? Like, so yeah, it's really missing in men's advice, I think, because typically the role models that we've had, I mean, our father's generation didn't really have the best mental health framework and paradigm to operate in. The people that held them accountable were quite often doing so pretty abruptly and in ways that are probably not so socially acceptable now. But it is really important, and I think you've spoken a lot about how important it is to have someone in your corner to keep you accountable, who can see your blind spots for you and who can call them out and say, hey, look, like here's a bad habit you slipped into, or, you know, here's something you said you weren't going to do, but you fell back there. And I couldn't agree more. And I've experienced, you know, the lack of having this sort of oversight in your life from good people, whether it's family or relationships. I think it's really important to be able to build that in an intimate partnership. And it's hard. What are your sort of go-to tips and tactics on how men can build these types of accountability dynamics with their partners in intimate relationships?
Can't do it with anyone else until you do it with yourself. I have this belief that is becoming more and more clearer with every conversation that myself and the team continue to have with men, is there's this massive trend in people, not just men, but people learning and consuming content to become more woke, to become more aware, conscious. And they're learning so much information about what it is that they should do, what it is that they need to, how they need to act, how they need to think, how they need to behave, what they need to do with their time, their morning routine, their diet, all this information. And this chasm that's been built between their level of awareness and their level of self-accountability and leadership is significantly lacking. So the bridge between what they know and what they're learning to what they are holding themselves to account to do is where I believe depression and anxiety lives. Because the moment when you become anxious or when you become depressed, it's usually because you know you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing. You just know. So it's like, I know I shouldn't be drinking. I know I shouldn't be smoking. I know I shouldn't be gambling and taking drugs and watching porn and doing all this and being abusive to myself and being abusive to others and not, you know, I know I should be spending time with my partner. I know I should be making those sales calls. I know I should be doing all my marketing. I know I should be doing all of this stuff, but I don't. And I'm here and I avoid and I am fearful and I know I should be waking up consistently. I know I should be going to the gym at a certain time. I know I should be doing all these things. So because I know it, but I don't live it, and that gap between that, there lies the problem that we're seeing. And it's like we have this massive challenge at the moment with women that are wanting men to step up and actually fulfill their duty and their role and responsibility of being a human being at one, but two, being a strong, healthy, masculine role model in the home life, but also collectively in society. But the thing that we're seeing is that there are a big, massive shift that men are talking what they're going to do, but not actually follow through with action. So then you have this element where men are believing that their work begins and ends with the epiphany that they have, that they've got a problem. And then when they go home, when they've had this new awakening and this new awareness that's been unlocked from going to a course or a seminar or a retreat or an event, the partner at home is then going, okay, I hear you say this, and I hear you want to change, and I hear that you've learned so much, but now show me. But don't just show me. Don't just show me once. Show me consistently over time. I've been a culprit for it. Don't get me wrong, Angus. I'm not perfect, right? I know that there are certain elements where I've seen consistency and where I haven't. The element that I believe that a lot of men really can show consistency is aesthetically in their body, because they want to be seen as strong and seen as powerful. So they want to be fit and healthy too. So we see a lot of commitment in the health and wellness space where guys go to the gym religiously, regardless. You could be working 14, 16-hour days, you'll still see guys at the gym because they seek comfort and safety in doing the work within their body. And then you see a lot of men then will commit to doing the work when it comes to making money in their business, because that's their livelihood. That's how they need to survive. That's how they need to provide. But the one element that we're obviously needing to discuss and talk about in depth is the lack of the emotional awareness at home by being able to hold space energetically and emotionally for their family, their partners, their children. That's where the confronting reality lies for most men that don't want to do the work. That's where they're avoiding. So then they're saying that they're going to change, they're going to do something about it one day, but then when they actually have to have the hard conversations, they don't. And that's when we're having this issue of then women not trusting men not trusting men, people not trusting themselves. It's because we're becoming more aware with all of this access to so much knowledge, so much content out there, and we're like, oh my God, Angus is right, Curtis is right. Yes. Okay. What am I doing about it? Am I actually going to apply it? The applied knowledge is power, right? Knowledge is not, it's the applied knowledge. And it's like, how can we as a family unit, how can you as a partner of a man that is struggling, that needs to raise his standards, how can you as a man help raise the self-love and the self-worth and the confidence in your woman or in your children? You need to be able to understand the gap of where they are to where they want to go, but the awareness that they have to where they believe that they're at. And you need to be able to love them through their insecurities and their trauma and their pain and everything like that to be able to help them build up. So for me, how would you have a conversation of something like that? Most of the time it is a very challenging conversation to have, because of the fear that I had when it comes to clients. It's the same thing. If I'm fearful that if I hold him to account, he's either going to be aggressive, he's going to be abusive, he's going to be avoidant, he's going to leave the house, he's going to go to the pub and get pissed. All these normal stories that we hear from women, it is apparent, it is real, it is true, it is happening, and it is something that we need to address and talk about. Is if we are then needing to educate women on how to communicate with their partner to then be able to hold him to a higher standard and him to account. So then not only is he improving his standards at home, he's then also then allowing to then bring that out into his environment by becoming a better man in his business, to becoming a better man in society amongst his friends. And there's different levels of accountability, I believe, that is to be held. First one, there's three different. There's individual, there's team, there's organization. They were the three different levels of leadership that we were taught in the military. And the first one, if we were to think about the individual, the man, then he needs to be able to hold himself to a certain standard and to hold him to account for his shortcomings, his past failures, what he fears the most, and have enough courage to act upon that, have the tough conversations, make the hard decisions, and go through the temporary time of that discomfort of going to the gym and exercising and feeling your muscles get sore, or having some of those harder, more sometimes probably aggressive and combative conversations to learn about what you need to do better in your home life. Because honestly, does any person, let alone any man, really want to know where they're failing? No. We want to believe like we are Hercules. We want to believe like we are God's gift to our family. We want to believe, but believing and also living are two different things. And I feel like there is a lot of people that are so ignorant in truly the standard that they are living. It's not as high as what they believe. I truly believe that there needs to be a big slap across the face and a wake-up call to look at ourselves in the mirror and go, are we really cracked up to what we think? Are we really actually that good at what we do? Are we really actually that successful? Are we really actually fit enough and healthy enough? Do I know that I'm being the man that I need to be in the relationship? Look, the reason why I'm saying this is I've seen this personally in my, not my own relationships, yes, but more in my family, with my upbringing, with my parents. The ignorance of what I had seen as a child, as a teenager, in my own household was like, how do you not see the problem? How can you not see it? But is it that we see it and we don't want to believe it, or we see it and we don't want to do anything about it because we can get away with not doing anything about it? We have this belief that most men will not make the change until it's too late. She's either already gone, she's already taken the kids, she's already taken half the house, she's already left, she's already moved on, before you've then woken up to the confronting reality that you had been failing her and failing your kids and failing your family in general for so long that you knew about it because you were aware of the problem, because you had felt it, you had seen it, you were experiencing arguments, you were experiencing the disconnect, you became distant housemates, but you did nothing about it because you buried your head in the sand, you worked on your fitness, you worked on your finances, but what you didn't work on was your family. And for me, when we see men come through the door, they're like, I need to get myself back into my power, my strength, my old days. It's like, no, the old days of who you were got you to where you are now. We need to unlock a 2.0 version of yourself. Like, we need to completely rebirth you into a new man, melt you down into the forge to become sharper, stronger, harder version, but also to be an integrated person who can actually communicate and can hold space for everyone around you. And that's ultimately the mission on the back end of what we do. It's not to just push and test and poke and prod in all the areas of men's lives and relationships and business to show them where they're failing. It's to help them rebuild themselves into that next version that is able to then maintain and uphold that standard of what their family deserves, and obviously to continue to grow and scale their businesses so they can provide financially also. But for me, to have that conversation as a partnership is always the most difficult, because the assumption is that if I am to say anything, then it'll be used against me as a weapon. If I do say something, then it will then be used against me later down the track. Or if I say anything, then nothing's going to happen. And the unfortunate reality is, for what we hear in most relationships and most separations, the divorces with the guys and also the women that reach out, I've been trying to tell my husband for years to change. I've been trying to tell my husband that he needs to get back into the gym because he's putting on too much weight. I've been trying, how can I tell him without telling him that he's fat and overweight and he hasn't bloody seen his feet for years over his beer gut? Like, how can I tell him that? What if you just told him that? Like, what if you just did? Like, what do you seriously believe is going to happen if you just tell him straight down? If you don't have enough permission with your partner to be that brutally honest, compared to myself then having enough permission to then call him out, then what type of partnership do you truly actually have if you can't tell him or tell her the honest truth? Now, is there a tactical way, Angus, to be able to do that? Yeah, most likely. You don't want to be then telling him that he looks like, some of the words that come to mind are not very pleasant. But But for me, I believe that there is a nurturing, soft, caring, loving approach that the feminine energy can nurture the masculine to bring him and step him up into his power. There's also then masculine, a game respects game, and sometimes a strong, powerful masculine man can also bring that out in them as well. So there is a point to make around who are we surrounding ourselves with. There's a point to make around what choices are we actually making that are going to help us achieve the desired outcome of our life and our relationship and our business? Do we even know what it is that we want and how we want to live our life? And then ultimately, it comes down to the fact that, am I willing to lay everything out and risk losing it all for my partner to actually know the truth? So that for me is what I'd say about how to communicate and navigate that problem, because for me, in the home, the woman needs to hold the man accountable. But before the man is in the home, the man needs to hold himself accountable. And then when he's out in society, then other men need to hold each other accountable to a standard. And if we do that all together collectively, the society would be in a completely different position, because we then have healthy masculine men then wanting to then elevate and bring and up the collectiveness of other men. But then when they're at home and they've taken their armor off and they're not battling the battlefield of business and the war outside the home, they inside their own kingdom, they've taken their armor off and they feel safe, they feel secure, and they feel like they've got the family unit that they're there to protect and provide for, loves them and cares about them and nurtures them. Then sometimes you see in the movies that it's the queen that's giving the hard conversation. It's the queen that actually rules the kingdom. It's the queen that actually says, turn left, turn right, don't do an alliance with him, don't trust him, I feel bad about this, this is what I see. So in a sense, it is actually the strength of the queen that is willing to be told, no, that this is my decision and this is what I'm going to do, but to still have a voice. It's to still be able to step up and to show up in full force in the strength, because the true power of the feminine woman comes from her essence of who she is at her core. And they're powerful, man. Like, they are very powerful. They are super powerful. But I believe what we're seeing at the moment is we are a civilization in humanity of a race and we're humans that have just, we've got amnesia. I swear we've got amnesia. Every generation that continues to be born, we're just losing memory of who we are and what our true power is. Men and women collectively are equally as powerful in their own right. And the more that we can understand that we're meant to be a team and a unit to fight together, then any war that's outside of the home can be won. Any war outside the home can be won. But if we're fighting a fight and fighting a war inside amongst ourselves, then there's no fight to be had outside. We need to fix what's going on inside ourselves first, so then we can show up in full force in our home to then build the kingdom, protect it, and then we can then fight any battle outside and win. That's my true opinion on that.
Mate, I agree so much with that. Like, it's all teamwork. It's teamwork. It's you and yourself as a team. It's you and your partner as a team. As you said, the kingdom. It's society as a team. Like, your community groups, your friends groups, your circles, your sports, friendships, like everyone who is not actively in your corner trying to help you win, not just by telling you the good things, but also by pointing out some of the bad stuff. Like, that person, you need to, in my opinion, really take a strong look at. It doesn't mean you need to cut them out of your life necessarily, but just like understand that maybe they aren't really showing up for you in the way that they could be. And mate, look, I guess to open up a little bit, because you hit some pretty soft spots on me personally with the last couple of points you raised. Like, I've gone through a breakup recently that I felt quite blindsided by, and it wasn't totally unexpected. There were troubles in the relationship, but it became apparent afterwards that while I thought they were temporary and transient and part of a process that was happening on the other side, there was a lot of stuff happening on my side that I wasn't aware of. And there's a lot of stuff that I had to sort of spend a very long time reflecting on and digging through to try and discover like what went wrong, like what was my part to play in this. And I feel like there weren't a bunch of conversations that could have been had to call me out on my shit, or maybe to hold me accountable for things that I said that I was going to do that didn't. And this podcast is actually a good example. Like, to be brutally transparent, like I spoke about this for a really long time before pulling the trigger on it. And one of the points you made was like, you know, often men wait too long before they make the change. And it took a crisis moment for me to make the change. And, you know, it saddens me to think about that, because I know, you know, this comes down to the awareness versus action gap that you pointed out. I know that crisis is the point at which most people wait till in order to make those big changes that they need to make. I'm very aware of that. And it would appear that I've fallen prey to that same paradigm where I took too long. The person that I cared about most in the world decided that for whatever reason, she wasn't willing to have that tough conversation. And I lost big. And it's maybe a loss that I'll never overcome. And that's a tough pill to swallow. But, you know, the message I guess I'm trying to give here is that we all go through these things to varying degrees in our lives. And if you're watching this as a man saying, oh, it's easy for you guys to, you know, be talking about that from your cushy studios on your podcast, but what about me in the depths of my own personal crisis? It's like, we've all been there. And if we haven't, there's a very high chance we will. So the words that we're saying, take them as advice, take them as experience, or take them as just entertainment, come from a place of knowing and understanding and hoping and wanting the best for you, not just from, you know, talking out of our asses. They say that the true hell is when the person you are meets the person you could have been. And I think that that point about the gap in awareness and action, you know, creating depression and creating sadness in people is that same paradigm of, I know who I could be. I know my awareness and my knowledge and my capabilities and my potential, but I'm not there. And whether it's because I'm making terrible decisions, or I don't have the resources, or I'm in bad habits, or I'm surrounded with the bad people, it's like, those are things that are almost all in your control, and they may not be solvable immediately, but you can get it done. It may not happen tomorrow, it may not happen next week, but you just got to get it done.
Yeah. I just wanted to just point out, like, thank you for sharing that and being open and vulnerable. You're on a podcast airing out your dirty laundry for everyone to see, and that takes courage, and it's what's missing, as you know. That's why you're passionate about wanting to do it. So thank you for sharing that with me. And will you ever get over the loss, is what you said. And what did you lose? Energy can never be lost. It just transforms in shape, does it not? And you may have been aware or conscious of all the negative things that come from that, but also you were unaware at the time of all the positive things that have come from that. And if you can, as you know, you can neutralize the emotion to create neutrality and stabilize, then you can see it for what it was. It's interesting that struck a chord within you. And I was the total opposite. I wasn't blindsided for this, my recent separation with my partner. Mine was the polar opposite, where I was the one that ended the relationship. So I was listening to what you were saying and hearing some similarities in the situation of, there should have been 100% conversations had. There were 100% conversations had, time and time again. And you're right, if there's conversations to be had and then action and no behavioral change, then sometimes you know when you're needing to then leave or change or move. But the one thing that I love and I appreciated was the last conversation that we had together was actually both acknowledging the shortfalls or the shortcomings and where we both made mistakes, where we both failed the relationship, but also acknowledging, and this is why I talk quite a lot about it now, about the accountability piece, was she said, I'm sorry that I didn't hold you accountable. I'm sorry that I allowed you to drop your standard. I'm sorry that I didn't have enough courage to be able to call you out on that, because I know how that's contributed to then where we are right now. And when she said that, it's like the whole idea of the questioning portion of where would we be if that was different? Where would we be if we were having hard conversations? Where would we be now if things were different? And I think that's a trap that we all fall into, is the idea of what could be, not what is. And if there is an element of trust and faith in God's plan, or just in the universe, that you're getting everything right now for what you need right now, then what if this happened for the way it had to happen, for you to learn a particular lesson, to not repeat the same pattern, for you to break the generational trauma, to cut the cords of, you know, your upbringing and you repeating? Because I don't know about you, Angus, but for years I could see where my patterns continued to repeat. I could see it. I wasn't aware of it at the time, but in hindsight, looking back, I was like, oh my God, I can see that now. My awareness piece, though, is where I started to learn that difference of, I started to become aware of, oh my God, this is a trauma bond. Okay, oh my God, now this is happening now. I'm seeking this. I'm looking for this. I'm yearning for this type of connection, this sense of attachment. I'm avoidant here. Okay, I'm hypersensitive to this. Wow, now I know I need to then make sure that doesn't happen again. And I'm starting to then catch things a lot more quicker. I'm starting to catch my own thoughts a lot more faster. So for me, no one would just openly just share stories like you just did about what happened and how you felt about it. So if it's anything that I'm taking from this, it's to surround myself with more men like you, but to help more men find people like you that are willing to actually open up and share, because that's what's missing. It's the ability to tap into your emotions, to be able to express it in a non-destructive way, in a non-aggressive way, because that's also the thing that men, if they're asked about if they are an aggressive man physically, then what they immediately go to is like, oh no, I don't bash women. It's like, no. Can you use your aggression in a controlled manner to get things done? Can you actually harness and embrace your true power as a powerful, strong, masculine man to overcome challenges and hurdles in your business, to do something that is physical and arduous? If you can, then you know then how to harness it. And when we bottle up our emotions because we don't understand how to release them in a healthy way or in a safe environment, it's when you see what's happening at the moment in society. It's like there are so many ways to be able to let off steam. There are so many ways to release it. But what I truly believe what is missing at the moment is the trust that men don't have in themselves to unlock their true power. I strongly believe at the moment that there are so many men out there that are sitting there afraid of their own strength, afraid of their own true potential. For what would happen if you truly knew how powerful you were? What would truly happen if you knew that you were unstoppable? What would truly happen if the Angus within you was like, okay, what if I told you that you are acting at 10% of your potential output, earning 10 times less than what you could be, and you're acting at like maybe 10 to 20% of your capacity? You'd be like, yeah, I could probably believe it to a point, but also, what does that next level look like? What does the true highest version, the most successful, most happiest, most fulfilled version of Angus look like? That for me is quite concerning or scary for a lot of people, because they don't know what that is. They haven't even spent time to visualize what that version of themselves could be, because all that they've been used to is just this: get by, survive, not thrive, do what I've been told to do, which is just work hard, get paid, save, gold watch pension, white picket fence, family and kids, do nothing with my life. That's what my dad did. That's what his dad did. I'm just going to keep doing that. But then you've got this whole group of men that are sitting there going, surely this is not only what life is. Surely there is more to it. And then you have all these curious people out there looking for information, looking for coaches, looking for mentors. But when they get to the point where they can actually do something about their problems and make the change, they're too scared to then make the jump. They're too scared to make the leap. And what I love to see when guys then move through the immersion, when they realize how powerful and how strong they truly are, that then translates into their relationship. They go home a more powerful man for their wives at home, their children at home, to be the leader that they're born to be. They then start taking massive and immediate action in their business. They're doing more that they know that they should have been doing in the past because they've been reminded how strong, how powerful they actually are. But a lot of men, I believe, are still very fearful of that power, whether or not it's because they don't know how to maintain it or retain that control over it, because they've lashed out before their parents, their dad was a person who was violent or aggressive or abusive, or their mother was, and all that they've seen is just chaos and chaos and chaos, potentially. But I also have seen an element, even in my own past sort of experiences in the last few years, is when you are ready to surrender to the process and the experience, but you truly back yourself and you're 2 feet over the line, that's where true power lies. Like when you are fully committed, when you plant your flag and you're like, here I am, and this is what I am, and this is what I do, and this is who I do it for, and this is where I'm going, get out of my way. Oh, it's nuts. It's such an interesting experience. But yeah, I would say that a lot of men don't understand how powerful they truly can be, and majority of the time they don't know how to express in a healthy way when things aren't going well. When things don't go well, we turn to the vice. We turn to our comfort. We're creatures of comfort. We're humans. We're designed to retain as much energy and in our brain to be able to then respond to flight and fight. So then if a saber-toothed tiger jumps through this window, then I'm able to defend myself and my family. But that no longer exists. That threat physically in the wilderness no longer is there. But the threat of people in society, the threat of losing the house financially and our livelihood is 100% there. And for me, I just believe that if we're creatures of comfort, then when we then are in duress, when we're in stressful positions, when things aren't going well in our business or in our life, we always turn to our default. And the more that we can put ourselves into uncomfortable positions where we become comfortable in those environments, then when things go wrong, you are more level-headed and calm and cool as a cucumber about it, which is why I take a lot of time to reflect on my military experience and have so much respect and so much gratitude for my time in service, for it had shaped me for the man I am today, to be able to endure hard, stressful times and to be able to still command, lead, and manage myself and others in those situations. So if it's any message that I would say to any man out here that is listening, you need to live on as close to the edge as possible. You need to be pushing the envelope in your physicality. You need to be pushing the envelope in areas that you know that you're weak in to start to strengthen. You need to challenge yourself. And more importantly, you need to have a mission. With a man that has no direction, he is no man to follow. And a man that's directionless, just sitting around on his butt, just spinning around on his chair doing nothing or coasting through life, that one is the most unattractive trait that women see in a man that is not going anywhere with his life, because it's not safe. A man not doing anything with his life, not going anywhere, he's not going to provide for a family. He's not going to be able to even stand on his own 2 feet. But the power that comes from within, when you are a man that has a goal, that has a target in mind, it is a completely different ball game of life when you know what it is you're wanting to achieve and what actions you need to get there. Completely changes the game in your normal life because you're striving towards achieving something. And that's why a lot of, I believe, men, they love to watch sport. They love to watch people running 100K ultras. They love to see all these influencers and these athletes do crazy things because they understand and they respect that how hard it must have been to get there. They love and they appreciate that effort, but they'll always sit there and go, I could never do that. There's no way I'd ever be able to do it. they're already putting their own limitations. They're putting limitations on themselves. The only one strong enough to stop you is you. Like you are the number one adversary that we need to help you fight the battle against, because as soon as you can get yourself out of your own way, then it just becomes a tactical deployment of information and knowledge. There's a plethora of information out there to help you grow a business, to help you learn how to count macros and your food, and what exercise you need to, do to get a certain body or result in fitness and sport. But we need to get you out of your own way, and that for me is the hardest feat. But once you do that, it's completely different.
Yeah, I definitely I've definitely been in my own way before, and the accountability piece we spoke about before, right? It's like surrounding yourself with good people, having permission and structure in your relationships to have someone call you out when you get in your own way, having strong mentors, having people in your life who you can trust to say, hey, look, that's not the right path. Here's a better strategy. This is a way of doing it. It's not the only way, but this is how I did it, and it worked out pretty well. Copy along, mimic me, rebuild my strategy or whatever it is. Just, probably at least start with this model. And all those things are so critical and important. And, again, like one of the big ways people get in their own way is inability to express emotion, inability to move through some experiences. And like for me, anger has always been a big barrier. I've always had trouble expressing it because I was very angry growing up, and anger always in my adolescent life resulted in physical expression. And obviously, young teenage boy punching doors, not a very acceptable type of behavior. And so my conditioned response to the environment, the feedback that I got from when I got angry was, that's bad, that's wrong, don't do that. And so for me, anger became a thing that I just shut down. It's like, I'm not letting that out. That's dangerous. It doesn't get approval. It doesn't get love. It just causes problems. So whenever I get angry, I just go internal.
Okay. And
I'm getting better at moving through that. I'm getting better at expressing that. But I think it's not something that's so uniquely a me experience. I think this is something, as I've gotten older, that a lot of people, especially men, suffer with. Mm-hmm. To talk tactics and techniques for a moment, mm-hmm. What are some ways that you have learned and that you implement in your programs to help men constructively express and move through their anger?
Physical fitness, straight up. That's not even that for me. I didn't even have to think about it. It is the ability to use fitness as a vehicle for you to express. Like next time, anyone watching, next time you're angry, go for a run. Like just run. No headphones, just run. Be in your own head, yell and scream in your own mind, but use your body as a vessel to be able to express you. Because if you think about, emotions are going to be stored in your body somewhere. They're going to be trapped. You want to talk about the connection of energy and emotions to then trigger injuries. Well, energy is always stored and trapped. That's why we have blockages. That's why we have injuries, because we're holding on to something that is emotional. If we think about anger, then if you're wanting to internalize it, then we're then potentially scared that if we are to then release our anger, we're going to lash out at people we love, because that's what we had seen when we were growing up as children, which means our reference point in the past is if it happens in the present, then it's going to then have a future effect of ABC. So for me, tactically, I'd say exercise. I would say learn how to control your anger in a way that would be a lot of combat sports. I know a lot of like jiu-jitsu, MMA, boxing is really healthy because you're learning how to then control your aggression. But then when you are then feeling angry, then I know instructors won't allow you to train if you're feeling angry, but then to help you then process it, what they make you do, go skip, go punch the bag, go for a run. So you're using exercise still as a way, as a vehicle to be able to express it. Another one, that because I live close to the beach, I know that whenever I have wanted and needed to be able to then do like a primal scream, I'd go on the beach and I'd scream, and I'd go into the water and I'd scream underwater. That's a healthy way to release it. At times I've even just grabbed a pillow and just pushed my face into it and just yelled and screamed. Yeah. Whether or not that would work for you, you can try, but any method that you can use that is allowing you to voice what's actually coming up for you or to exert it out of you physically, I would say is in a safe environment is the way to tactically exert that anger for sure.
Yeah, the screaming, the primal screaming, something that I've seen on some of your programs, and I think, it's such a landmine, sort of landmine riddled place. The whole men's expression of anger, because it's always kind of socially contentious and seen maybe as this like negative trait, but men store emotions in their body, and this is something that we're getting a lot more understanding and knowledge about now in men's mental health and psychology research. But it runs very counter to obviously the way that women process emotions stereotypically, and also the way in which the mental health and counseling industry functions in terms of trying to help people solve and work through emotions. So for men, it's really important when they're dealing with heavy emotional moments to do something physical, to find where the emotion is stored physically, reconnect with the breath, actually move into the body and out of the mind, which is very counterintuitive. But this is how we do it. This is how, for whatever reason, our biology has decided that's how emotions get stored. And so I really love the exercise piece. Like, that's obviously a go-to for me, and anyone who doesn't use exercise as a mechanism for processing emotions, give it a try. The martial arts piece, again, don't take your rage out on the guy on the mat, because
you won't be allowed to. You wouldn't be able to, for sure.
And you'd be done as well. Like, if you go in, if you go in cooked and you hurt someone on the mat, like, you'd be done. But bags, fantastic. Bit of pad work, as long as you got someone who's okay. You've thrown heaters at them, then that's fine. But just the ability to be in a space with coaches and mentors who understand that type of thing, because like, if you're a boxing coach or if you're an MMA coach, you deal with angry men all the time. And their ability to recognize that, put you through conditioning drills, even if it's just, your coach at your gym probably has built into their unspoken permission set the ability to call you on your fucking bullshit, because that's how fighting gyms work.
You'd hope so.
Yeah, you'd hope so.
The softer approach, I think, that we haven't spoken about is journaling.
Okay.
Yeah, bear with me here on this one. So
no, I'm a big fan of journaling. I do it a lot. I'm liking where this is going. It's a nice counter to the punching bags.
Yeah, so we've got the hyper masculine, approach to being physical and
Primal.
quite primal, quite aggressive. But writing still is physical. You're still getting whatever is up in here out. And no matter how you can get it out, whether it is breath work, whether it is journaling, whether it is physical fitness, I think those three modalities would be super powerful. If you were to write on a notepad, if you were to literally get a notepad down and you started writing, and on the top of your page you wrote, "Why am I angry?" If you literally wrote, "Why am I angry?" and then you just continue to write and you just continue just to let it all out. It's like, okay, but why am I truly angry? Okay, but why again am I really angry? And then keep writing. What you're doing is you're writing it all out on the piece of paper, and then at the end of the piece of paper, what you could do is you could write, what do I need to let go of, and who do I need to forgive? Because if we're thinking about anger, like, what are we angry about? We're angry about someone who has done something wrong, or something that has happened that has made us upset. Could be so small. But majority of the time when we're angry, or what we see with a lot of the men that come through the program, is they're not necessarily angry. Well, they are angry at the other person, their ex-wife. They're angry at their father. They're angry at their mother. They're angry at someone in their team in business, or just in general. They're angry about something. What is actually underlying below the anger is they're angry at themselves, because there was an element in their past that they wish they had acted differently to not experience what hurt them the most. They wish that they could have defended themselves. They wish that they could have reacted in a different way. They wish that they just weren't there in the first place. So there is an element of forgiveness that comes when you are angry. You need to be able to identify, well, in order for me to forgive others, I need to forgive myself. That I was doing the best I could at the time. I did everything that I could, but unfortunately, this is what was a result of the things that were outside of my control. I forgive myself. I also forgive the person. I must let go of X, Y, Z. So writing and journaling is a huge, huge piece that I don't believe is used so much. We do quite a bit of reflective work in our immersions, as much as it's gruesome and it's hard and it's intense physically and emotionally, and there's a lot that goes on there. There is also a lot of elements where we need to dive deep into the internal, the emotional stuff. That's really actually where the breakthroughs occur. It's not just the physical, that's the vehicle. What truly actually lies underneath is what we peel back. It's like the onion, the layer. It's just peel after peel after peel. And for me, the deeper you go, the bigger the breakthrough. But with anger, sometimes just writing it out compared to having to go for a big run or go punching a bag can also be beneficial, because you just got to get it out of you. You just got to get it out of your body, whether it's in your body, whether it's in your head, on your mind. Get it on paper and read it and actually look at what you've written and go like, oh, you can call yourself out. You don't have to have anyone else out. You can call yourself out and be like, God, am I really angry at that thing? Am I really angry? Why am I angry? Why am I angry? Oh, why? Oh, now that I'm writing it, that looks really pathetic. Okay, well, I've got to let go of this because of these reasons. I must let go of it because this is the negative consequences of it. Okay, well, I forgive that person because X, Y, Z, and I forgive myself because A, B, C. So journaling is another vehicle I think would be quite beneficial.
Yeah, I love that. It's journaling has been a big part of my life for a very long time, and I think the worst moments in my life over the last little bit have been have correlated with moments where my journaling has slipped up and my habits for journaling have fallen apart. And it's one of those things I always come back to, and I open up and I look at the last entry and I go, oh yeah, I said I was not going to fall off this train, and here we are picking up the pieces again. But the final point that I would say is that just to sort of loop in one of the previous topics we were discussing around creating space for open communications is just, and this is obviously hard in the moment because when you're experiencing intense emotions or when you're frustrated and you're angry and you're locked up about this, it's so hard to be pragmatic. But have a friend or someone you can talk to where you can literally call them up and say, hey, I'm experiencing this emotion. I need to speak nonsense to you about what's going on in my head for a moment. Can you please just listen? And then just like vent. If it can be your best mate, it can be your mum or dad. I mean, if it's your partner, fantastic. You know, you've got a strong king or queen that you're connected with. But again, that's a tough ask. If it's a counselor, a therapist, great. Those people are literally paid for that. But the ability to just frame the experience that someone else is going to get from you and say, I need you to just listen to the nonsense in my mind, and then verbal diarrhea, whatever's going on, amazingly powerful. You obviously do a lot of this work with men in your immersions, and I'm not surprised to hear it, but it is also something that you kind of go, oh yeah, I guess there is that. But because the crawling over rocks and wrestling in the mud is probably a little bit more viral social media content than a bunch of guys all journaling and crying. But I did want to talk to you about your immersions. You run this this program called the Gauntlet.
Yeah, no problem.
For anyone who hasn't seen any of the content and is completely fresh to this whole topic, what is the Gauntlet? Give us the rundown. What can people expect to experience? What do men get to learn and get out of this crazy immersion?
Yeah, it is crazy. So it's a 5-day military-style immersion for business owners or entrepreneurs, leaders, and it encompasses all of the facets of military leadership to be able to unlock the version of themselves that they cannot unlock alone or within society's frameworks of what they have access to. So over the course, without when you sign the contract to join the army, you turn up with your suitcase and your ironing board and your suit, and then you don't get told what you're going to do in your military career. It's very similar to the immersion. You don't actually know what we do until you get there. And the reason why we keep the process or the sequence of events private until they attend is there's an element of a release or a sense of surrendering to control that men must do in order for them to get to the next level in their life, because for what they believe they have to do, for who they have to become, has gotten them to where they are, and they can't get to that next point. So we carefully curate evolutions, both physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, but also in business across the immersion, to test and poke and prod in all areas of their life and business and relationship where they suck. The reason why it's called a gauntlet, because back in the day, in the army, you would run between your mates and they'd beat you with sticks. So like, we'll beat you with sticks, not physically, but metaphorically, in a way to be able to push you to a point where you can break down and rebuild yourself to become the version of the man that you must become for all of those that are relying on you back at home. So, we work on mindset, we work on self-leadership, discipline, relationships, because that's what is actually breaking down for all men in leadership who come to the immersions and who want to work with me. So when we go through the process, we have to dig deep on all of those areas, because the three most common areas that men like to attend is they want help in their business because they don't feel like the man in their business. They want, more profits, better clients. They want to be able to market and sell at a level that would 10 times their game. I said before, like, what if you're acting at 10% of your potential output, like earning 10 times less than what you could be? That's what these men know. The second one is always relationship growth, because they know that they're the limiting factor in their relationships, because, how they do one thing is how they do everything, from the disconnect in the relationship to the growing gap with their kids. Like, they know that they're not feeling like the man in their relationship. He doesn't feel loved. He doesn't feel connected, and the way that he deep down needs. But then the men that are coming through are then not providing their partner with what she needs, which is to feel safe, to feel seen, to feel heard, to feel, understood and cared for. And she's in terrible misery because of them. So he's needing to then step into that role as the leader to be able to bring that growth and that love and trust in all areas by becoming the man who takes command and can navigate those problems and win in their relationship. And the third one is always leadership, because no one actually no one teaches men how to actually be leaders. Like, they're all just making it up as they go along. They wish that their life ran like a military operation, smooth and ordered and predictable with no nasty surprises. But instead, they move through life feeling like a slave or a whipping boy to everyone else. Leadership
is one of the most frustrating things, because it is, in almost all facets of our existence and our culture, it is naturally selected. It's like, oh, you're a natural born leader, you get the C on your jersey. Oh, you're a natural born leader, you get the promotion oh, you're a natural born leader, you are the one that just got out and built a company on your own. There's a few. Obviously, your program seems like one of the very few that teaches leadership in a structured and formal way, which is amazing.
Thank you. There's for me, there has been this element of, well, I guess with those three areas, because they're the main pillars of growth. Like, we all need more in all those three areas. We need to be able to make more from our efforts. We need to be able to become the leader who takes command, has those hard conversations and can hold the space. But more importantly, remove ourselves from being the obstacle by stepping into that next level, that next version of ourselves. But how it sort of all rolled into why this exists in the way that it does exist is it emulates quite a lot of the environment of the healthy components of the military. The military has pros and cons. It's an organization just like every other private entity out there. For me, when I grew up as a young kid. My parents split when I was 3 to 4. I didn't have a healthy masculine role model to help me navigate boyhood into manhood. Like he was non-existent. He was a Boilermaker welder. He was a tradie. He was always smoking, gambling, drinking. He was, just not the healthy version of a man that we want to see in our childhood, in our life, and in modern society that we're talking about. So I had to find it. I had a very loving, caring, nurturing, beautiful mum who also then had to be the masculine pole for me to then learn what it was to be masculine. So she had both roles. Now, a mother wound 100% was created because I was learning about the feminine from a masculine woman who had to protect, who had to provide, who had to lead, because my dad was never there. So I learned a lot about a masculine woman and not so much of the softer, carer, nurturing, loving, radiant, feminine woman that we all crave as masculine men. So I went to find someone to help me navigate that, which was the military. Went to the college at 19, graduated as a lieutenant, posted into the battalion, took over my first platoon at the age of 20. They just got back from deployment in Afghanistan, and they were nearly double my age in some instances. There were guys in their 40s, guys in their late 30s, and I was 20. And I was on the back foot absolutely immediately. It's like, here's this young guy, lieutenant, recently graduated from the college, boats, all this type of thing. So I was on the back foot, and I had to mature really fast. I had to learn what it was to be a leader from my training very quickly, because I then had a platoon of men who relied on me to do my job. I had a platoon of men who looked up to me as the leader, as the commander, as the example. So I then was in this position where they would come into the office and they would ask me, "Boss, are you really only 20?" I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "My 2 younger brothers are older than you." So straight away I was like, who's this lieutenant? Who's this guy? The thing that I said in the lunchroom when I had my first ever meeting with my whole platoon was, I said, "All I ask of you is for what you're going to ask of me, and that's to do your job. If we both do our job, then we'll be fine." I had best soldier, best section, best platoon for 3 years before I had the opportunity to then deploy to Iraq in 2016 as the lieutenant, as a platoon commander. So I learned a lot about leadership through the college, through RMC, down in Duntroon in Canberra. But then by being under fire as a young lieutenant with men double my age. So I had grown up in my 20s already leading and commanding and managing men that were way beyond my years of maturity and life experience. So I was humbled very quickly to be in a position of leadership where I didn't know everything. I would have soldiers come through and say, "My wife's taken everything. I've come home to an empty home. I don't know what I need to do. What do I do, boss?" And it's like, don't ask me. I'm 20. Like,
wild.
I've no idea. I can barely grow hair on my face, let alone know what to do with an empty home and no family. You've got to go. But what I did understand was, because I came in with the frame that I didn't know all the answers to the problem, but I knew the right people to talk to, then I would then get legal, and then I'd go get the padre to then deal with the situation. So I learned this through the college. I learned this as an officer. I learned how to discern when to speak, when not to speak, what to do and what not to do very fast in my early ages. But what I didn't learn was how to translate all of my learnings as a military leader, as a commander of men, into a healthy masculine role in a relationship. Because I thought that the army would teach that, because I was missing that from my upbringing with my childhood. But I learned the facets of being a strong, powerful, confident, masculine man, a leader. But the element that was missing for years was how to actually hold space emotionally and how to hold space energetically in a relationship. So I was engaged at the time. I was in a beautiful relationship for 4 to 5 years. I was getting married when I returned back from deployments, and I repeated the same bloody pattern that my dad did with my mum, self-sabotaged all of what I had and completely lost everything. That turned into 2 years of drugs and alcohol, 4 nights a week, putting on weight, not exercising, doing anything I could to sedate myself and numb out from life on a regular basis to avoid the shame and the guilt that I had from ruining a relationship, losing absolutely everything that meant the most to me, and then just learning helplessness of like, oh, well, this is my life. This is it. This is what I deserve. Punishment, 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 punishment. And so it wasn't until I remember I looked in the mirror and I saw myself overweight. I looked unhealthy. I remember I was like coming down from a couple of days. I had like 4 nights. I was on the piss. I was on drugs. I was just having the shittest time of my life. And I remember I looked and I was like, this can't be it. This surely can't be it. You were this leader of men, this leader in uniform. But as soon as I transitioned out, I lost my identity. I lost my brotherhood. I lost my family. I lost absolutely everything. I had no mission. I had no vision. I had no direction. I had no purpose. All I had was just in front of me, party, numb, do anything to avoid the confronting reality that you don't know who the fuck you are anymore. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know where you're going. You thought you were going to do this for life. You thought you were going to stay in. You thought you were going to have the kids and the marriage and the lifestyle. And then all of it was taken away from you because of your failures. And that's what I was stuck with. That's where I was. And I was like, okay, I need to do something about it because I can't keep living the way that I was living. So I drew the line in the sand and I was like, okay, enough's enough. Got my health back on point, got my fitness back on point, and then I started working on all the shit that had made me super uncomfortable to deal with, which was still by trial and error, still trial by fire. I still ruined relationships. I still went in and out of relationships. I still learned, but what I was doing was I was continuing to raise my self-leadership and accountability with the level of awareness so that I was reducing the gap in between what I know to then what I was living. And so to this day, that's why this has been formed and this is what has been created, because the level of leadership that is required within a man to actually show up in full force, there is an element of grieving the part of you of who you never will be. There is an element of surrendering to the things you don't know and that you will never know. There is an element of complete 100% devotion to a mission and to a cause that you want to put your name against, where you'll plant your flag and you'll say, this is what we're doing, this is where we're going. That requires discipline, that requires confidence, that requires courage, but it also requires a level of commitment that I don't believe a lot of men know how to actually do. And for me, the last point is I didn't love myself enough for that entire time. I didn't believe I was worthy enough. I didn't believe I was good enough. I didn't believe I was anything because of the lack of love that I didn't have when I was growing up as a kid. All I wanted was my dad's love. All I wanted for him was to be there for me, to not only show up when I played rugby for the army, but to come to everything throughout school, throughout my entire life. Like, why only turn up when it suited you? Why only show up when it was suited you? So my own message or my own mess and my own story became the reason why this entire organization has been created, because I have seen now till this day the pain and the suffering that my dad continues to live in for his choices to hold on to the story of his past failures and his shame and his guilt around losing mum and us and my sister and I. I see that in the man. I also see what my mum had gone through and what I had gone through, what my sister had gone through, and I don't want other family units to go through what I had gone through. So my mess and my trauma or my story has become the reason why this exists and the reason why I'll continue to fight for the men that don't have a voice, to continue to fight for the women that don't have a voice, but continue to fight for the young boy that is still at home and the boy within me that was wanting what he couldn't have back then, to ensure that everyone else that I can then work with can have that if I can do something about it. That for me is devotion. That for me is commitment. And that for me is what's missing. And for what the men go through in that period, in that immersion, is a curated journey through physical, mental, and emotional challenges and tests to then move out on the back end through a complete awakening, in their sense of spirit and soul, with a clear line of direction of a pathway that they can then aspire to then maintain to become that version that they know that they can be, but they just need a bit of help to get there. That's what it is. That's why it exists, and that's why it will continue to do so for as long as I live.
Mate, I absolutely love that. Yeah, look, the story that you tell yourself about what is happening is almost always more important than what actually happened. And it's usually wrong in a lot of ways. It's probably right, but all that's kind of irrelevant because it's your lived reality. And I'm sorry to hear about what you had to go through as a family unit, and like broken families, really shatter my heart and touch me, because I'm fortunate enough to have a pretty strong family unit, but all of my closest friends have all had broken family units, and it's a really tragic thing for a kid to have to grow up and wonder what's wrong with them that caused their mum or their dad to leave or to be absent or to do the thing that they did. And the fundamental truth is that it's almost never you. Like, the way that people treat you is almost always a reflection of them and not you. And to create a mission and a purpose out of your lived experience, there's this famous quote. I can't remember who said it. I think it actually might have been Hormozy, or he paraphrased it, and he said, the origin story of the hero and the villain are the same. The villain said, I've been hurt, and so I'm going to hurt other people, and I'm going to hurt the world. And the hero says, I've been hurt, and I'm never going to let anyone feel it again. And what you've done is the heroic choice of saying, I'm going to break the patterns of my past, not only just for me and my family, but I'm going to go one step further, and I'm going to create a shield and a barrier that is going to break the pattern in other men and other women and other families and other kids' lives. And that's fucking inspirational, man. So look,
Thanks,
I've got
man.
a lot of respect for you. This has been great. I would really love the chance to meet you in person and do this again sometime.
Yeah,
But
let's do it.
for anyone who doesn't know who you are and what you're about, where can they find out more? Where can they follow you? Where can they keep up with what you're doing?
Yeah, it's Curtis Tofa on Instagram, but if you wanted to reach out and have a chat, curtistofa.com is where you can find me. More than happy to have a conversation to see how I can help you, help your family, help your team in business, help your organization, but ultimately just, follow. If you're not ready to reach out and talk, where most aren't, follow the journey. Curtis Tofa on Instagram. I'd love to be able to shed light on all of the challenges and the problems that you're experiencing and how other men are solving those issues with us. And then when the time is right and when you're ready, by all means, the door will always be open.
Mate, thank you. And I appreciate you sharing your stories with us and your experiences, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.